Hello and welcome to Bears on Leash, a guide to walking your Newfoundland dog. My name is Quinn. I'm a certified trainer and a manager for the adopter support team with the National Newfoundland Rescue. And most relevant to this presentation, I was a dog walker for many years. Dog walking should be a chance for you and your dog to explore the world together. Goal of this presentation is to better help you see walking through your dog's eyes, give you the tools to make walks more enjoyable for both of you, and increase your confidence in the tense moments. Okay, so why walk your dog? 40% of people do not regularly walk their dogs. Well, of course, there's physical exercise. That's what we all think of when we think of walking our dogs. However, we don't want to get stuck in this personal trainer at the gym mode with our dog. Walking is more about than just physical exercise. It's also about mental health. Walking is a form of enrichment. Most people think of enrichment as things you buy, Kongs or snuffle mats, but enrichment is any human orchestrated activity designed to safely mimic natural tendencies of a canine. And canines naturally tend to do a lot of walking. This satisfies their desire for exploration, information, and curiosity. So, what's the issue? Why is walking so difficult? Well, of course, there are distractions out in the world. We all know that. However, also that dogs have a different understanding of the world than we do. Dogs are unaware of the rules of our society. Things we find offensive, like pulling on leash, are not instinctive. I do a lot of phone calls with people, and I can tell that along with being frustrated with their dog for pulling on leash, which is understandable, they also are personally offended. Your dog's behavior is not a personal offense. We grew up with the idea of walking a dog. It's in our literature and movies. Dogs did not. Meandering, sniffing, and exploring the world is natural to them. And finally, dogs are quadruped animals and we are bipedal animals. This means that we have two legs and they have four legs. Simply put, they walk at a faster pace and their legs are longer and move quicker. They have a bigger stride than us. If you've ever had to walk with someone who maybe has a walker or is on crutches and they're walking at a much slower pace, you know how awkward this can be. So let's get into some details before you go out and walk your dog. What are the things that you need to have set up ahead of time? First off would be tools and equipment. A Newfoundland dog can exert a great amount of force on themselves if they pull or bolt. That's not a surprise to anyone. We all know that. However, what you might not know is that in physics, more surface area equals less pressure. So the same amount of force, when applied to a greater surface area, reduces the pressure. This is why a Y-shaped harness with double clips for more control is the safest option. A harness with a handle and multiple points of contact. Why do I say a Y-shaped harness? Why do we care about the harness shape or fit? Well, this is a dog's anatomy. We have the scapula, shoulder, the sternum on the chest, the humerus on the leg there, the elbow you can see right up by the corner of the rib cage, and then the rib cage itself. You might be thinking, I walk my dog on a harness or I own a harness, but I don't know what shape it is. This is a T-shaped harness. You can see the strap there goes across where the scapula meets the humerus. This will naturally restrict the movement in the dog's shoulders and legs, so their gait is going to be a little off. And when we think of where the force is applied when a dog pulls or bolts, you can see that force is being applied partially to the scapula and the humerus, and some will ricochet into the elbow. And if you've been in the Newfie community for a long time, then you know we Newfie folks are quite protective of our dog's joints and limbs. Let's look now at a H-shaped or Y-shaped harness. The difference between an H-shape and a Y-shape, the Y-shape is going to have a big pad on the chest and H-shape is going to have two straps. I prefer Y-shape over H-shape, but they're going to be somewhat similar. A Y-shaped harness, as you can see from this picture, allows for nice range of motion in the shoulders and legs. And when force is applied, it's being distributed to the sternum and the rib cage. The NCA describes a Newfie's chest as full and deep, and the ribs are well sprung. Simply put, Newfies have a huge chest. Remember about what we said earlier with force and pressure? A huge chest is a lot of surface area to absorb the force, meaning there will be less pressure. Why not a collar? The truth is, I'm not against collars. I do sometimes walk my dogs on collars, my well-trained dogs on collars. However, if you're tuning in here, it means your dog pulls on leash. And therefore, a collar, as you can see, the force being applied is going to go right at the trachea and esophagus, which are not well protected in the front structurally. So here are some options for you. These are all Y-shaped harnesses with a handle and a clip on the front and the back. We have rough wear with a 42-inch chest. We have Kurgo, which is what I personally use, with a 44-inch chest. And then you have Mighty Paw, which goes up to a 49-inch chest. Some other walking tools. The other big recommendation I have is to get yourself a bungee leash. The more dynamic a rope is, that means the more give or spring constant a rope has, the less force the handler will feel. So the shock will be absorbed a little bit by the leash itself. This is why a bungee leash is best. Bungee leashes that are double clipped and have multiple handles are going to be ideal for walking a large dog. I would also recommend having a flat collar on your dog. Personally, I clip to the collar and the harness. Some people like to clip to the front clip and the back clip. That does allow for better control of the dog, but it will also put a strap across that shoulder and leg right there, which might restrict motion a little bit. Some dogs that's necessary because they're really hard to handle. Some dogs it's not. If you're afraid of your dog slipping out of a harness, maybe they're a flight risk, I recommend a martingale collar and clip to the collar and the harness because your bungee leash is a double clip leash. Some options for bungee leashes, you can use a leash extension. So this would just go down by the harness and go to your normal walking leash. This is the one I personally use. I realize it's meant for walking two dogs. Do not do that. I just use it as a double clip leash. And finally, this one, again, I realize it has a strap around the waist. Get rid of the strap around the waist. That can unclip and you can put that somewhere else. But this then, if you took the waist part off, you can see there's two clips to be a double clip leash, though you may want to add a leash extender. And next up, I would recommend that you bring treats on a walk. I know ahead of time, the things I'm going to get the most pushback on are having your dog in a harness and bringing treats. So I'm going to defend this point just a little bit. Emma Parson has this great quote, "Healing in the behavior store is expensive." I love this imagery where we imagine purchasing our dog's behavior through training, repetition, and reinforcement. Some behavior is more expensive than other behaviors. Healing is definitely a more expensive behavior. So why use food? Food is the old standby. It's the way dogs were originally domesticated. It's the oldest and most reliable language we have with them. Britannica Encyclopedia says wolves facilitated their own domestication by trailing nomadic people in northern Eurasia and consuming the remains of game animals that hunters left behind. I often make the joke that thankfully, people back then were a little less stingy with their food than we are, modern humans sometimes are with their dogs, or else we wouldn't even have domesticated dogs. It's also very natural for them. Following their food is one of the first things that puppies learn to do as they're following their mom while they're nursing. And a dog chasing down a deer is also a natural thing for them. Walking on leash is very unnatural, walking in a straight line at a slow pace, not meandering or exploring. So we get to add a natural component to what is otherwise quite unnatural. Why not praise? I hear this all the time. I would like my dog to work for praise. Well, when we think about the currency that we can use with our dogs, praise is on the lower side. So praise could work if you restricted it severely. Any resource that is readily available is not valuable. Your praise is free throughout the day, or at least I hope if you're showing a lot of love and affection to your dog, it is. However, food is not. This is why I don't recommend free feeding. And we talk to our dogs all the time. So, food is generally a higher currency than praise to dogs. And remember, healing is an expensive behavior. So you might be thinking, okay, fine, I will bring food, but I'm not wearing a treat pouch. I'm not going to buy or get treats. That's fine. I hear you. I do recommend a treat pouch. That's what I use. But if you don't want to, you can use a frozen container of peanut butter or yogurt, the kinds that you would put in a kid's school lunch, and throw them in the freezer, bring them on a walk. The dog can lick them and then put them away, lick them and then put them away, and it allows you to hold on to just one thing. You can also do something similar with a cheese stick. I recommend cheddar cheese sticks over mozzarella, where you put it in your hand, you allow the dog to nibble a little off the end, then you move your hand down, allow them to nibble off a little more, and again, you don't have to bring so many things. Okay, some more specifics. When, after exercise, when your dog is learning to walk, exercise is important before the walk. I know you might be thinking, yeah, but isn't walking the exercise? Not while they're learning. Take your dog out in the backyard, run them around a bit, and then do some walking. How long? Very short. Keep it to 5 to 10 minutes maximum. Do not fall into the he's good for the second half fallacy. What I hear when people say that is for the first half, he was pulling, rehearsing that behavior, and being reinforced for it by moving forward. Where? Pace outside your home. Stick neighbor to neighbor on either side. You can slowly increase distance, but if you need to get home, let's say your dog seems off or something happens that now your dog is getting like, more and more amped up or worried, then you can get back home very quickly. And also, there's some habituation or familiarity with the environment just outside your home. So it's more ideal for learning because it's a little less distracting. If outside your home is not an ideal location, maybe you live on a highway or your road is busy, then I would recommend finding another fenced location. My biggest recommendation here is strange, I know that, but it's cemeteries. Many cemeteries, if you go on their websites, allow leashed dogs. They are fenced, they are quiet, and their paths are very wide because they're big enough to fit cars. Obviously, I would recommend sticking to the path so that you are being respectful of people's loved ones. And if you see people there, then, I kind of avoid it. But they are a really great location for teaching leash skills. With who? You and no one else. No bringing kids, no bringing other dogs. We want this to be as least distracting as possible. Okay, finally, before we get into the skills, you need to understand a little bit about thresholds and the stimulus gradient. What is a threshold? A threshold is like a doorway for your dog's emotional states. Just like a threshold of a home, this is a threshold for emotions. It's a dog's capacity to cope with a trigger. And the stimulus gradient is the scale of how difficult that trigger is. So we can have 3 different positions for being in or at or over threshold for dogs. We have under, this is a good space for learning. We have at threshold, this is where guidance is needed. The dog is starting to get worked up. And then we have over threshold, this is where they're out of their brain a little bit and intervention is needed. This presentation will be set up so you will learn 2 skills at each threshold level. And this will look different for every dog. Some dogs hit the pavement and some fly off the handle. Every dog will handle stress a little differently. This is why I'm going to show you how to use a certain technique that's a little more general. We're not going to talk about specific body language behaviors. We're going to make it very general so that it fits every dog. In her ACE free work course, Sarah Fisher discusses the link between posture and behavior and uses the imagery of a pendulum to observe our dogs more objectively. I love this reminder that there's such a strong connection between our dogs' bodies and their brains. They wear their emotions openly if we're willing to stop and notice. So, we're going to look at our dog and imagine each part of the dog like a pendulum. Obviously, the pendulum can be neutral. This is relaxed and neutral. When you look at that part of the dog, you're going to say, what would the neutral pendulum be for this? What would be the relaxed neutral state? And then you're going to notice how far off from neutral is that part of the dog. That's where the pendulum has begun swinging. This technique does not require you to memorize any body language, and you don't need to stress about what anything means. So let's go through some examples quickly. The eyes, they can be soft, neutral eyes. Or, swinging the pendulum just a little bit on one side of the spectrum, they can be a focused stare, like when your dog sees a squirrel across the yard. On the other side, the pendulum has swung this way a little bit. Dogs can have an avoidant whale eye, where you see a lot of the whites of their eye. Nose and mouth. Newfies should have a soft, neutral mouth, their jowls nice and loose. On one side, a tight, dry mouth, and on the other side, a big smile pant with excessive drool. This is an example of three dogs who are off. And I want you to try to notice what the spectrum here for dogs' mouths would be. So we have a very large pant there. The dog's tongue is huge. Again, we have a dog who's very stressed. Their tongue is huge. And this is the other side of the spectrum. We also have a dog who's stressed, but her mouth is very tight. You can see some excessive drool there. Her cheeks are very tight and taut. How about ears? Dogs should have a neutral ear position, but ears can also be pulled way back. Or if you think about opening a bag of potato chips in the kitchen, you might notice your dog's ears shoot forward. And you might be thinking, yeah, but Newfies have such floppy ears. Dogs have 18 muscles in their ears, so they can absolutely control the position. How about a dog's stance? You should be able to imagine a dog is like under a square in that balanced, neutral stance. However, you can also have dogs on either side of the spectrum. It's like a rhombus. Dogs are up forward on their toes, or they're way back curled downward. Tail should be a neutral tail carriage, is going to be nice and relaxed, but you can have a flag tail way up over their back or a tucked tail way up under their belly. So you're going to go through each portion of the dog and notice what neutral would be and then how far off from neutral a dog can be. We're going to go ahead and do a little pop quiz or trial run of this now using a dog who was in foster with the NNR. She had some amazing foster parents who got these videos for us. So right off the bat with this dog, I can notice that her tail, which is the most obvious thing there, is really high. She's carrying her tail very high, whereas at home, when she's relaxed, it's much more low. The other thing we can notice is that she's stretching her legs way back in the back there. Her back legs are stretched way back. Whereas at home, when she's walking around, she's much more like a square underneath her. It's very balanced and neutral. And how about her face there? Her pant is very tight and taut. It's pulled. Her cheeks are very pulled. Whereas at home, when she's relaxed and neutral, it's much more calm looking. We can also use this pendulum method to gauge behavior as well. Let's take appetite, for example. When you're out on a walk, gauging threshold might be saying, is my dog land sharking treats out of my hand? So you're afraid of losing a finger? Or is your dog refusing food altogether? Is your dog sniffing like they're zigzagging like they think they're a tracking dog? Or are they all eyes and no nose, not using their nose at all? I've noticed reactive dogs tend to be hypervigilant with their eyes and not use their nose very much. This will take practice. Unfortunately, there's no quick fix to noticing body language. It's something you just have to do at home, where you go through each part of your dog and observe them. Next time the doorbell rings or somebody's in the kitchen and your dog hears them, start noticing those little details. So, skills level one is going to be where the dog is under threshold. So, this is where the dog is neutral and balanced. What do you think the building blocks of leash skills are at this level? Well, they are body awareness and engagement. What do I mean by that? Body awareness is gait control. The dog is aware of themselves. Engagement is where they're checking in, they're aware of you. What does this look like practically speaking? What are we actually going to teach the dog? Well, we have bubble clicking. This is a way of teaching them an awareness of themselves in relation to you. And then we have look at me. That's a way to ask them to regain engagement. First up with bubble clicking, think of an appropriate radius around you. For people in the city, this might look different than people in the country. Keep it consistent and click at random intervals in that radius. When I'm saying the word click here, that's my marker. I use a clicker as a marker. However, you can use the word yes or good, or some people click with their mouth. Common question I get. Yeah, but what if they're in the radius, but they're on their way out? I would recommend that people be careful not to get into this gotcha mode with their dogs when they're training them. This happens often where when people are working with their dogs, they're constantly trying to test them or be like, see, you did it wrong. When we're training or teaching our dogs, we want to be in teacher mode where we're showing them where the edges of that radius are. And we're not concerned about whether they go in it or out it. That's how people learn. That's how dogs learn. They go out of their radius, they don't get clicked. They go in the radius, they do get clicked. So as long as they're in the bubble, even if they're on the way out, they get a click. And I recommend starting off at your dog's natural pace so you can give them some easy wins before moving to a more difficult pace. All right, what does this actually look like? Here's a video of me doing this with our dog, Baby Jones, who is a new dog who is learning leash skills right now. He's 1 year old. And you can see he has some orthopedic issues, so gait control is a little extra difficult for him. You also might notice he does not have a leash on. I'm walking around the room with him. As he's on the edge of the radius or that bubble, I'm going to go ahead and give him a click and a treat. And if he moves out of that radius, I'm not concerned with that. Let him figure out where the edges of the bubble are. And here I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. Okay, next up would be teaching look at me. Most people know how to teach this to dogs, and many dogs already know this, so I'm going to fly through it. Start with capturing eye contact, then you add duration. You don't want to glance, you want, a long eye contact. Next, add movement, but you move and your dog stays stationary. And finally, where you're both moving together. Here's a very quick video of me working on this again with Davy, who is our new dog, so he's still learning a lot of new things. And now I'm going to move around, and what I want to see is that he's following my eyes, which he does really well there. Okay, you might be thinking, when I learned loose leash walking in a puppy class, it was all about having a loose leash. Well, the issue with using a loose leash as the main gauge of leash manners is that people often accidentally only teach their puppies to run on leash. When people have a little puppy, they think, oh, my dog is doing great on leash because it's a loose leash. However, puppies have short little legs. So to keep up with you, they're having to run. But while the leash may be loose, there we go, the gait control is not very good. They're only learning to run. And as their legs grow, you may suddenly notice what happened. At 8 months old, my dog became terrible on leash. Well, their legs grew and they never learned how to have body awareness or gait control. So teach your puppies how to walk slowly. A big question you should be asking yourself is the leash a seatbelt or is it a steering wheel? If we're just thinking about is the leash loose, then we're accidentally using it as a steering wheel instead of a seatbelt. How do you know if you're doing this? Instead of worrying about a loose leash, lose the leash. So take your dog outside in the yard or start in the home. Get rid of the leash momentarily. Do not use a leash for this. And for 5 to 10 minutes, see if you can keep your dog engaged and walking at your pace. If the answer is no, then you shouldn't be taking that dog out on a walk yet. You're putting the cart before the horse at that point. They're not ready, you're not ready, and you're not going to have a pleasant walk. Here's a quick example of me doing this with one of my dogs. You can see I'm asking for some engagement there. You'll notice he does not have a leash on. And you can see there he would have been almost out of my radius. So I'm seeing if I can regain his attention, which would be crucial if we were on a walk. Changing gait pace. Can he keep up with me? All of those are important questions before you're on a walk. And so finally, I realized we touched on a lot of things. Let's put it all together. All right, so step one, let your dog sniff. Walking is about more than just exercise, it's about mental enrichment as well. So plant your feet, don't let them pull you or move forward, but let them explore the environment around you. When Grisha Stewart was asked, "Do I let my dog sniff?" I love this quote: "Your dog isn't a soldier and this isn't a march." Next, observe your dog. Watch their threshold. See where they're at. Are they under, at, or over threshold? Ask for some engagement. Can you get a look at me? And next, walk forward using bubble clicking to keep them in your radius. And once they start trying to explore the world again, then stop, plant your feet, rinse, and repeat. What does this actually look like out and about in the world? And this is little Davy here, and we are teaching him leash manners now. So Hank sees that he's a little distracted. He's going to allow him to explore the world, but he's not allowing him to move forward. Davy's going to sniff and mark, which is very normal for a dog. Now he's stepping back, observing his threshold, seeing if he can eat, and seeing if he can get some engagement here. We ended up needing to move. There was a car. So asking yourself, can I get some engagement? And if you can, then go ahead and move forward. Clicking for when your dog is in the polite radius. And before your dog would get distracted, you would go ahead and plant your feet, allow them to explore and repeat the process. Okay, so next video will be skills level 2. Thank you so much for tuning in to skills level 1.